I think we are starting to see the first real reality check of the AI era. Now, don't get me wrong, AI is incredible. I use AI almost every day. I think it's one of the most useful technologies that we've seen in decades. But over the last year, something strange happened. Some companies stopped focusing on what AI was actually helping people accomplish and started focusing on how much AI people were using. More prompts, more agents, more tokens, more everything. And that mindset eventually got a name, Tokenmaxxing. Now, if you have never heard that term before, don't worry. Most people hadn't heard of it a few months ago either. But I think Tokenmaxxing might end up being remembered as one of the weirdest trends of the AI boom because it wasn't really about outcomes. It wasn't really about productivity. It was about maximizing usage. And as we are now starting to see, maximizing usage and maximizing value are not necessarily the same thing. So today I want to talk about what token maxing is, why some companies embraced it, why some companies are now backing away from it, and why I think the entire industry is learning a very expensive lesson. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is token maxing? So in simple terms, it's the idea that using more AI is automatically better. The more prompts employees send, the more tokens they consume, the more AI agents they launch, the more productive they must be. At least that's the assumption. And honestly, I can understand how people arrived at that conclusion. AI tools are genuinely useful. Claude Code, Codex, Cursor, OpenAI, Anthropic, these tools can definitely save hours of work. They can help developers write code faster. They can help researchers find information faster. They can help teams move faster. So, naturally, some companies started asking if AI is good, shouldn't we encourage people to use as much of it as possible? And that's where things started getting interesting because once companies started measuring AI usage, people started optimizing for AI usage. And that's where the problems began. So, one of the most interesting stories recently involved Amazon. So, according to reports, Amazon had internal AI token leaderboards. Now, think about that for a second. So imagine working into work and seeing a ranking of employees based on how many AI tokens they had consumed. Not outcomes, not customer impact, not product improvements, just tokens. And honestly, if you have worked in tech for any amount of time, you probably know exactly what happens next. The moment a company starts measuring something, people start optimizing for that metric. That's just human nature. If management reverts a number, people will find ways to increase that number. But increasing the number does not necessarily improve the underlying thing that you are trying to achieve, right? We have seen this happen before. Years ago, companies obsessed over lines of code. Then there were story points. Then there were productivity dashboards. Now we are seeing AI usage metrics. Different metric, but the same mistake. Because at the end of the day, nobody actually cares how many prompts were sent. What matters is whether better work got done. Now, the story that really caught my attention involved Uber because Uber's experience highlights something that I think many companies are only now beginning to understand. AI is not free, and modern AI agents are specifically not free. For years, we have been talking about AI capabilities, how smart the models are, how fast they are improving, what they can do. But we are now entering a different phase. We are entering the phase where finance teams start asking questions, questions like how much are we spending? What are we getting back? And according to reports, Uber ended up introducing limits around AI usage after running into concerns about spending. Now, whether you are bullish on AI or skeptical of AI, I think that's a very fascinating development because it shows the conversation is kind of changing, right? We are moving from capability discussions to economics discussions. And eventually, every company has to have that conversation because no matter how exciting a technology is, it still has to make business sense. Now, here's something that I think many people outside the industry don't fully appreciate. The AI companies are using today are completely different from the AI tools they were budgeting for a year ago. A year ago, most people were opening ChatGPT, asking a question, getting an answer, and just moving on. Today's AI workflows look very different. Now we have coding agents, research agents, planning agents, autonomous agents. These tools search files, read documentation, analyze data, call tools, revise plan, run for extended periods of time. And every one of those actions consumes token, a lot of tokens. So companies created their AI budgets. Many of them were budgeting for simple AI interactions. What they got instead was an explosion of agentic workflows consuming far more compute than anyone expected. And that's one of the reasons we are seeing so many conversations about AI spending right now. And honestly, I think this is where the entire token maxing movement runs into a wall because people started confusing activity with productivity. Those are not the same thing. Let's say an AI system generates 50,000 lines of code. Um, that sounds impressive, but how much of that code is useful? How much of it is maintainable? How much of it introduces future problems? How much of it needs to be rewritten later? Those questions matter far more than the raw output. More is not automatically better. In fact, some of the best engineers I have ever worked with wrote less code than everyone else because they spent more time thinking, more time designing, more time making good decisions. The value was not in the volume, the value was in the judgment. And that is still true today. So, one of the biggest misconceptions I see online is that people assume software engineering is just typing code. It is not. So, writing code is only one part of the job. Engineers evaluate trade offs, they understand business goals, they work with product teams, they consider security, they think about future maintenance. They make architectural decisions. They mentor teammates. They review pull requests. They understand company history. They understand why previous decisions were made. And honestly, many of those things are incredibly difficult for AI systems. AI can help. AI can, accelerate. AI can assist. But generating code is only one small piece of software development. And I think more companies are beginning to kind of realize that. Now, here's another thing I have noticed. The conversation coming from some AI leaders seems to be changing. A while ago, many of the headlines focused on replacing jobs, replacing workers, replacing white collar roles. And look, AI absolutely will change jobs. I don't think anyone seriously doubts that anymore. But more recently, the discussions has become more nuanced. We are hearing more conversations about augmentation, about helping workers, about expanding what people can accomplish. about increasing productivity rather than simply eliminating jobs. And honestly, that feels much closer to reality because if you look at the history of technology, major breakthroughs rarely eliminate work entirely. They change the nature of work. They create new responsibilities, they create new industries, they create new opportunities, and I suspect AI will do the same. So, what is the take here? What's the lesson here? Personally, I don't think token maxing failed because AI failed. I think token maxing failed because it optimized for the wrong thing. It optimized for usage instead of value, consumption instead of outcomes, activity instead of productivity. And those distincts matter because companies don't succeed by consuming the most AI. They succeed by solving problems. They succeed by building products people want. They succeed by creating value. And AI can absolutely help with that, but only when it's being used intelligently. So, look, AI isn't going anywhere. It's going to get better. The models are going to improve. The tools are going to improve. The agents are going to become more capable. And I genuinely believe every knowledge worker should learn how to use these tools. But I also think we are moving beyond the hype phase. We are entering the reality phase, the phase where companies start asking harder questions, the phase where return on investment matters, the phase where outcomes matter. And honestly, I think that's a good thing because at the end of the day, nobody cares how many tokens you burned. Nobody cares how many prompts you sent. Nobody cares how many AI agents you launched. What people actually care about is whether you solved a problem, whether you created a value, whether you delivered results. And I think that's the lesson the entire industry is learning right now.